Good morning, Flosstube. Here we are. Let's see. May 29th, 10 a.m. 70 degrees and cloudy out there. May 29th means day 29 of Stitch Mania. Just wow. Just wow. I know I keep saying this, but here we are, end of May. I've been doing this pretty much every day. Missed a few. That's okay. I know you guys have been enjoying it. I've been enjoying it. Today, we are doing something a little bit different. We're not going to be stitching today. Well, I'm not. You may be. I'm going to be knitting, and I'm going to be talking about adding beads to your knitting. So what I have here is a little swatch that I've started with the yarn that we're going to be using in the next club project by Laura Nelkin, Nelkin Designs. This yarn is by Kettle Yarn Company. It's called Bayul Singles, B-E-Y-U-L. It's a colorway named Praline that was dyed especially for Laura's club. It's a yak silk merino blend, so it's a gorgeous color, but it's really a soft. It's going to have drape won't be too drapey, but it's pretty nice, but it's really soft and shiny. You can tell the color is just gorgeous. It's a little bit deeper in real life, a little bit richer in real life than what it's showing up in the camera. The iPhone camera has a tendency to bleach things out or brighten them up just a little bit too much. But anyways, I've started my swatch and I've added some of my beads. So as I mentioned, I need to choose what beads I want to use for this project. I know I need size 6 seed beads, so that's what you see here. So I went through my stash, and it is a large stash, and I pulled out all the different ones that I think will work. I have 2 more to try. These ones and these ones. So those are the ones I'm going to be placing on the recording today. These ones here are a triangle bead, so they're a little bit different shaped. The hole was a tiny bit smaller, so it was a little bit tighter of a fit, and I'll talk about that as we're going through the video. And it does kind of, I think, pull. You can see it's pulling the stitches in a little bit tighter than a regular size 6 would. But anyway, so today we're going to be placing beads. There are 2 different ways you can put beads on your knitting. One is stranding beads onto the yarn, and I will talk about that more as we're going on. And the other one is placing beads with a crochet hook, and that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm just going to knit across a couple rows here so that I can get a little bit further up from where my last beads were. Doesn't really matter. I just am spacing them out a bit. So this is going to act as my gauge swatch too. I don't really know what needle we're using in the project. Laura is going to be having a live video event for the club members on the 30th, the evening of the 30th, where she'll release the pattern. By the looks of the few hints that she's given, it does look to be a cowl. I think it's a Mobius cowl. The Mobius is, the infinity sign. That's basically a Mobius. If you've ever knit in the round, and when you went to join in the round, if you accidentally put a twist in your knitting when you joined in the round, you did a Mobius. You created a Mobius. So this is an intentional Mobius, and with the if she does this if it is a Mobius and she does this like a previous Mobius cowl that she has designed, you use what's called a Mobius cast on, where you're casting on a whole bunch of stitches on a really long cable for your interchangeable needles, and I don't even remember how the technique is done, but you end up introducing a twist. So it's basically one long row of stitches that you end up with. So that's my guess. We shall see. But anyway, so we don't know the size of the needle that we need, and because of the difference in how Laura knits as compared to how I knit, I've knit enough of her patterns to know that I always have to go up 2 needle sizes from the needle size she uses in the pattern. So I'm just using a 5 on this for now. This is a fingering weight yarn, actually a light fingering, I believe. So I'm just using a 5, and we'll just have to see where we are when the pattern comes out and what I have to do. So anyways, placing beads. So none of this is hard, but there are some additional tools you need. So Laura she actually has an Etsy shop, and I'll link that below. She has a kind of a travel beading kit is what she calls it. What she has in her Etsy shop now is different. This is one of the goodies that came in one of her clubs last year. So inside our little travel kit, we have what are dental floss threaders, and we use these when we're stranding beads on yarn, and I will talk about this later. A little bit of scrap yarn, a nice tapestry needle with a hook. Actually, I think I put that in there. I don't know where that came from. But this is the main thing. A little travel-sized crochet hook. Can you see that? So this is the size of needle that you would use, or the size of crochet hook that you would use for placing beads on stitches. And basically what you do, is you have beads already on here. You take the stitch off, you slide a bead down, you place the stitch back on your needle, and then you knit with it. I actually use a different tool than this because this is good for traveling, but this isn't what I use in general. And you can see there's a little lobster claw on it to hook it onto your scissors or whatever you want. So that is a handy thing. And then you would just pour your beads in here, and they'd be contained. If you had to stop in the middle, they'd be nicely contained. So that's a nice thing to have if you're beading on the go. What I actually use is something called a beetle needle. This comes in 2 sizes. A thicker one, that's this one, for the size 6 beads, and the thinner one for the size 8 beads. And you can see that on the tips of these, there are little crochet hooks, little tiny hooks. On the bottom, there is a curved end and these 2 stoppers. The curved end in reality is what you're supposed to use to pick up the beads. I just don't do it that way. For whatever reason, I've just always picked it up from the other end, from the pointy end, and yeah. So I'm going to put the size 8 one away. I have this tube that I keep them in that when I ordered this, I believe from a company called Lacis, L-A-C-I-S. I will find a link to this and put it below as well. It came in the tube, so that's a nice handy little carrying case. All right, so the first thing I have to do is put beads on this. Now, the reason I like this type of thing is because when I am knitting a project, and for this particular, since it's just a little swatch, I'm only going to put 3 beads on here. But when I'm actually knitting a big project where I know I'm going to be using a lot of beads, you can see because of the length, I can load up a lot of beads on here. With a little crochet hook, even the normal size crochet hook, I can usually only fit 1 or 2 beads on the tip. And so I like this because I can load up a whole lot. So that's basically all you do. You just slip the beads through. Now, if I did have a whole lot loaded on here and I had to stop my knitting, the reason there is 2 stoppers is because I can take that one and put it on the top, and it'll hold my beads in place. And then I can stick this in that tube, and it will stay in place, and I don't have to worry about it getting caught on anything or losing any beads. So to store that, I just put it back on there. Now, I am a continental knitter, as you saw. I learned knitting by throwing, and I knit English style throwing most of my knitting life. I only learned to knit continental maybe 3-4 years ago now, and I've never looked back. But what I'm going to do is show you both ways to add beads. It's not a different way, but just the style looks different because I'm doing different things with my hands, so that you get a feel for it. So as I mentioned before, the first thing you do, so I have my beads loaded on there, and the crochet hook is on the end. So I just grab that stitch off of the needle, slide my bead down over top of that stitch, put the stitch back on the left-hand needle. Now this is where it gets tricky. The hardest part about this, I think, is making sure that that hook does not get caught in the yarn when you're pulling it out of the stitch. So what you want to do, and this is true whether you're using one of the little crochet hooks or the beetle needle, or whatever you're using, you want to take that hook part and turn it so it's sliding against the knitting needle and not against the yarn. And so you just slide that out, and I actually just hold that in my hand, and then I knit the stitch, and I'm going to knit one in between all of my beads. So I slide it off the left-hand needle, slide a bead down, place it on the stitch, put the stitch back on the needle, turn that hook part in towards the needle, slide out the beetle needle, and knit the stitch. And it'll be either knit or purled, whichever the designer tells you to do. And again. Now when I split that stitch, it's getting a little tight in there. Okay. So now I'm going to put my beetle needle down, knit across my row. So picking beads, you can see I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 choices here. And I can tell you already this isn't going to be an easy choice, because I'm really liking how all of these are looking on this yarn. So whenever you're choosing beads, though, the things you want to think about are basically how noticeable you want them to be. Some people like their beads to be blingy. They like that little bit of shine. Some people want them to be more of a subtle look. I just happen to not really have any of the more blingy beads in colors that would suit this. I certainly think like a brown like this, like there's a root beer that has more of a transparent look to it, would be pretty. So yeah, the first thing you do is decide what kind of look you want to go for. And a lot of people say, you're putting so much work into putting beads on here, why wouldn't you want to see them? And that is a very good point. So that's something you think about. And other people just don't like all the bling. I am not a very blingy person, so I have a tendency to gravitate more towards the matte beads, the matte finish, which is what these are, the Picasso finish that are a little bit grungier looking. So yeah, it just depends on what you want. And then you just start putting your beads on. A lot of people will just lay some out on the yarn like this. I like actually putting them on the stitch because it gives me a better feel for how, now I don't think any of my beads are actually that type, but if they are the type that are more like crystal lined, transparent, that you can see through, the yarn will affect the color of the bead. So it's helpful to put the to actually put the bead on the stitch. So yeah, I like those too. These kind of have the same finish as those. This is going to be a hard one. I'm going to need your help. So let me talk a little bit about bead sizes, and then I'll talk about, I want to put a few more rows in between before I put on the last beads. So bead sizes, these are size 6s. So those are the larger, I would say, except for pony beads, I think those are the largest size of seed bead. You need size 6s when you're doing this kind of thing, because when you're placing the bead on the stitch, because as you saw, you're placing the bead over 2 strands of the yarn, and so the hole needs to be somewhat bigger. As I showed you on these ones, the hole's a little tighter and you can see it's gathering in the stitch a little bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does provide kind of a different look. You also get some beads, like some of the ones that are lined in different ways, it makes the hole smaller. So size 8s just would not go over top of the two legs of the stitch. The hole would just be too small. Delica size 8 beads would be a good option. Those would work for this because for Delica beads the opening is a little bigger. But for the most part, on fingering weight, when you're placing beads, you're going to be using size 6s. Placing beads, you don't really have to worry about the makeup or content or twist of the yarn. The other method for putting beads on, though, you do have to worry about that. So the other method is stringing beads. And when you string beads, you actually string beads on the yarn before you start. So let me see if I can illustrate this just a tiny bit. So that's when I use my dental floss threader. And we'll pretend this is the end of the yarn. You put the yarn through here, so this is acting like a needle. And then you're picking up beads like this. On here and stringing them onto the yarn like that. So you have the bead actually sitting on the yarn. And usually when you're doing this, you're stringing hundreds of beads at a time. It creates a very pretty look, but it creates a different look from what you're going to see when you're placing beads. So when you're placing beads, the bead is actually sitting on the stitch. When you're stringing beads on and then moving them up, you're usually moving them up, not usually, always, you're moving them up so they're sitting in between, they're sitting on that yarn that is in between stitches. So you'll get a look of beads going in between stitches. And you can string beads up and put them on yarn overs, so that kind of creates a drapey, the yarn over that is a drapey thing in between stitches. Will be loaded with beads, so that's kind of a cool look. But it really just depends on what, what look the designer is going for. Whoops, going the wrong way. The reason the content of the yarn matters in that method is because you are stringing the beads onto the yarn. The yarn gets a lot of abrasion because you have to move the beads down the yarn to get them out of the way from what you're knitting, and then you have to move some up so that they're handy for when you need them. So there's a lot of up and down that's going on the yarn when you're using beads in that way. Therefore, the yarn you need to use, like you couldn't use a single ply like what this is. It would abrade that yarn so much. What did I do here? It would abrade the yarn so much that you would end up with a fuzzy mess, and it would probably eventually break the yarn. You can't use the softer yarns like cashmere, Tussa silk. Mulberry silk is fine. Mulberry silk is a very strong fiber, so you could use that. But anything that is soft and will abrade easily, you can't use. The standard for knitting with beads that are stranded on the yarn is superwash merino that has a good twist. So even superwash merino that's a single ply you can't use. Singles won't work. So you want to look for the superwash that is twisted, that has some kind of ply to it. Regular wool may or may not work. You can test it by putting some beads, like cut off a length of the yarn you want to use, string some beads on it, tie it on your wrist, and then wear that like always in the shower and everything for 2 or 3 days and see how the yarn reacts. And that's how you test for whether that yarn will work with stranding beads on. In general, fingering weight, doing it that way, you'll use size 8 beads. Sport weight, you can go up to size 6 beads. Beyond that, the yarn's too heavy for beads to go on. And once you get up into size 6 beads, you have to be careful because the weight is so much greater that it can really pull a piece down. All right, so I'm going to now put on this last color bead, and I will do this using the English method of knitting so you can see what that looks like. So again, I'm just getting 3 beads out and putting them on my beetle needle. And again, I still keep the beetle needle in my hand. It's been a while since I knit this way, so I hope I don't fumble around too much. How did I used to do that? I think I still kept it over there. Yeah, maybe not. We'll leave it there. Okay, so first, take it off, slide it down, turn that hook in towards the needle so it doesn't catch. You don't want it caught anyway. That happens. So you just kind of carefully mess around with it till you get it out from around the stitches. And then knit another one. So you can see this method is not difficult. The other method isn't difficult either. It's just, like I said, the different tools that you use and the techniques that you need to learn to keep your sanity when you're messing with a little hook on your yarn. All right, so I'm going to go across here, and then I'm going to work my way back, and then I have to try and decide. What I will do when I'm done with this swatch is I'll put a few rows of the garter stitch on the top as well to help it to lay flat because stockinette does curl. And then I'll wash it because that's what you do. That's the appropriate way to tell if you're on gauge. You block your swatch. If the designer has said, hopefully the designer will put in the pattern whether the swatch is blocked or not. Usually it is, because that really is going to tell you what your end product is going to be, because we block our knitwear for the most part. So let's see. While I'm doing this, I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I know a lot of you, I know it's been on the news pretty much around the country, the terrible flooding that happened in Ellicott City, Maryland here. The day before yesterday, so on Sunday. This is the second time in 2 years that Main Street in Ellicott City has basically been wiped out. They've done so much development in that area, and because of the way the landscape is, the water, I mean, it's a slope, it's a hill, and it's all coming down into Main Street. And so all the building that's happened up on top of the hill means that there's less land for the water to soak into. It's the same thing that happened in Houston. There's so much more cement, so much more area and land that there's no place for the water to go, and so it just drains straight down into Main Street. And yeah, it's been, I don't know how many photos you've seen, if you've seen anything, but it's been devastated again. My hair salon is actually on Main Street, and they just got back into their space, I believe last year sometime, and now they've been wiped out again. So I would like to ask you to keep the people and the businesses of Ellicott City in your thoughts and prayers. I can't imagine, let alone the loss of inventory, the loss of, I mean, some of the buildings, the glass was just shattered, and their retail space is just filled with debris. my salon, the glass in the front did not shatter, but the foundation underneath is just gone. There's pilings that the building's sitting on, but there's nothing underneath. I looked on their Facebook page this morning and they had a picture posted from 2 years ago, 2016, where the same thing happened. And it was the same thing. The storefront looks fine, but the foundation's just gone. It just, I can't imagine how devastated these people are feeling. The businesses, the cost, the insurance cost. I mean, so just keep them in your thoughts. It's going to be another long haul. I haven't heard. I actually have an appointment next Tuesday, so I assume I'll be hearing. Well, I know I'll be hearing from them as soon as they get things figured out about how they're going to handle that. Yeah, my heart just bleeds for them. So let's see. I realized that I didn't show you my progress from yesterday, so I'll show that to you here whenever I'm done with this. Just gonna go across this row, and then we're gonna take a look at what we have here. I like them all. I wonder if I can do a mixture. How weird that would be. I've done that before. I have so many beads that I'm kind of Laura's bead experiment person. I'm off screen, I'm sorry. She knows, she can always trust me to do something strange with beads. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But I certainly enjoy playing with beads. Oops. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to eliminate the triangle ones, the smaller ones, because these other ones are going to show up more. And that's the other thing with using size 8 beads on this technique. They can have a tendency to get lost in your knitting. So the 6 beads certainly stand out more. I think I'm going to eliminate those because those kind of get lost as well. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, those ones are somewhat similar. These, I think, have a little bit more iridescence to them. Yeah. All right, tell me your opinion. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which would you choose? Inquiring minds want to know. So 1 at the bottom, the purpley ones, 2 is the brown, 3 is the green and gold tones, and 4 is the kind of purpley one at the top. All right, so that's that. Now, yesterday, I was working on my Winter Wonderland by Kaniki's Whims and Prims. So, didn't get very far, just got a little bit of the snow down at the bottom done. This was a pleasant stitch. I did 1/2, and this is 32 count, and yes, I like the 1/2 much better. Really happy with that. I will probably put this away until Christmas in July. So this will be one of my bigger pieces for Christmas in July, along with all the ornaments. So there is that. Now, tomorrow, 3 more days, guys, 3 more days. Tomorrow I'm working, so the next 2 days are whips. So tomorrow is this Welcome Friends kit, a Dimensions kit. And because I can never let things be, I swapped out, there's no way I was going to use the brown stiff Ada that came in that. That just did nothing for me. So this is what I have so far on this. Look how pretty that is. This is actually the same fabric that I was doing my summer row on, and I've not taken that out yet. This is it here. It's the same fabric. And this, of course, is also over 2, or 2/2, and I have to keep this 2/2 because there are blended threads in there. whether you can see that's a mixture of like navy blue and red. So this has to be over 2. And to tell you the truth, it didn't bother me at all on this. So I think that's the same, yeah, that's the same fabric. So yeah, I don't know why this one didn't throw me, but it didn't. I think it's probably the colors. So anyways, this is tomorrow's stitch with me video. That's what I'm trying to say. So anyways, guys, I am at 30 minutes. This is a long one because of the knitting. Help me choose 1, 2, 3, or 4. Let me know which one you like. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.